What is social psychology? Social psychology is enthralling. With plenty of unanswered problems comes a number of hypotheses about human behavior and why we make specific decisions, judgments, or comparisons. This video will provide you with an overview of social psychology and its impact on the globe. I'll go over the history of social psychology, the major theories, and the studies that helped form it into what it is today. So first and foremost, what exactly is social psychology? Let's begin with a quick overview of social psychology. It is the study of how people behave and interact with one another in various contexts. This field, psychologists think that all behavior occurs in a social environment. We can begin to grasp the inner workings of the mind and why certain decisions are made by looking at society's influence on the individual. Like many historical crises, the latest pandemic brings out the best and worst in people. You may come across stories on the internet about people selflessly giving up their time, money, or lives to aid others. But you may also come across stories of people who exhibit blatant disrespect for the truth, or even the lives of others. The people around us have had a huge influence on the decisions we have had to make during this pandemic. A young, healthy person may choose to self-isolate, for example, to preserve the herd rather than themselves. You undoubtedly had a lot of questions about human behavior while you were locked up in quarantine, as I did. These extreme circumstances frequently raise questions about our nature and how we function as a society. And these are not new questions. Social psychologists have been striving to address them for decades. So let's go over some social psychology history. Since the ancient Greeks, psychologists and philosophers have been concerned with the impact of society on the person. For example, Aristotle highlighted the significance of a state or political society in an individual's survival. He also felt that human language and rules distinguished us from other animals, and that some of these laws outlined everyone's various tasks in order to foster a successful economy. However, Aristotle did not perform experiments in the same way that psychologists do today. This method of theory validation was not widely used in social psychology until the late 1800s. A few psychologists had written on the influence of society on human behavior at this point, but they didn't have the facts to back it up. Hey everyone, it's Knowle, your gateway to understanding human behavior and emotions. Join us for fascinating insights. Hit subscribe for a part of our journey through the exciting field of psychology. In 1895, one of the earliest studies in social psychology as we know it today took place. An experiment was carried out by Norman Triplett, an American psychologist at Indiana University, in which youngsters wound up a fishing rod. Some children finished the activity alone, while others worked with other youngsters. He discovered that youngsters who were among their friends were more driven to accomplish the assignment quickly. And thus, the concept of social facilitation theory was established. Social psychology became popular in the early 1900s, but it truly took off later in the century. In America, world wars and the Great Depression sparked many questions about society and its impact on unique individuals. Many social psychologists' work was also influenced by racial prejudice. In the 1960s and 1970s, darker and more disturbing tests on human behavior led psychologists to reconsider the process of conducting experiments and how to approach social psychology responsibly. And the research has spread far beyond the limits of the United States. Today, global research and impact continue to shape social psychology and how it is approached. There's still so much to learn. Let us now look at the fundamental beliefs of social psychology. As a result, the fundamental ideas of social psychology address more than only how humans interact with one another. They also explain how to collect data and watch people in order to develop hypotheses in social psychology. So here are some of the key ideas that have shaped social psychology and continue to be at the heart of this discipline. Number 1, society has a tremendous influence on people's behavior and decision-making. Even if a decision is taken privately, society has an impact on the individual. Even if no one is looking and they know they will not be caught, a person may not choose to steal. They are just impacted by the laws that society has established. Number 2, experiments can be carried out to support hypotheses. As a result, social psychology is regarded as predictable and testable. Psychologists are expected to test their hypotheses several times and measure the results objectively to support or refute their position. This process is changing as psychologists learn what it means to be objective. In fact, some notable experiments have been dismissed due to researcher prejudice. It is an ongoing process. Third, behavior is used to evaluate someone's personality and character. You've probably heard the saying, actions speak louder than words. In social psychology, actions speak volumes. A few social psychology theories investigate how we analyze another person's activities and how this impacts our perception of that person. These types of examinations are also used to make judgments about our personality and character. And interestingly, because we can't actually know what someone is thinking, we can only look at their behaviors. And we can sometimes ask them, but it's not always accurate. Finally, we have certain goals can be achieved through behavior. Yes, our society influences our behavior and actions, but these decisions are all made to achieve a specific objective. This could be to meet a physical need or to achieve a certain social position. And if you study more about social psychology, particularly their most famous theories and research, you'll see that these four core notions appear repeatedly. Let's talk about some of the most well-known theories and names in social psychology. So the first one I'll mention is something called attribution theory. So why did your best friend tell you a lie? Or why did you overtake that person in traffic? And why would a billionaire give up their wealth for a more austere way of life? Every day, you must make hundreds of judgments. You make some of these decisions alone, some in front of others. And occasionally, you witness other people's conduct and make judgments about why they made their decisions. Attribution theory examines how we watch other individuals and explains how others make judgments. We are, after all, meaning-making creatures. We want to know why someone made certain decisions or what elements they consider to influence their behavior. So the two basic categories within attribution theory are external influences, such as money, weather, and what they're wearing, and internal factors, such as their inner beliefs or insecurities. In summary, attribution theory seeks to explain how we see others when they make judgments. Following that, we have self-perception theory. So attribution theory examines how we observe and judge the behavior of others, whereas self-perception theory examines how we observe and judge our own behavior, and how we perceive ourselves is critical to the goals we believe we can attain, our mental health, and how our lives unfold. Following that, we have social identity theory. So you may see yourself as someone who is humorous, accomplished, and courageous, but you may also see yourself as a student or an actress who lives in New York. As a result, you may identify as a New Yorker, a student, or an actress, and your identity, in turn, may influence how you make decisions or present yourself to others. This is the essence of social identity theory. This theory investigates the method by which people identify themselves and others. We frequently observe people in in-groups or out-groups, and depending on your position, you may observe people who are similar to you in one light and people who are different from you in another. Following that, we have cognitive dissonance theory. As a result, when people engage in groups, they are certain to have opposing viewpoints. But what happens when we learn new information that contradicts previous knowledge? According to cognitive dissonance theory, this contradiction can be extremely difficult for people to bear. Indeed, some psychologists believe it creates worry. Our minds struggle to absorb and interpret this contradictory information. If we aren't aware of our discomfort, we often dismiss fresh facts and stick to our gut instinct. And believe me, we see this all the time while discussing politics at the dinner table or sharing stories on social media. People simply want to keep believing what they believe. One final issue and theory I'd like to discuss is evolutionary psychology. So why do we perceive others the way we do? Is it because of the culture in which we grew up? Or are our perceptions, language, and social interactions simply the outcome of evolution? And it is to this question that evolutionary psychology seeks an answer. This psychology technique has been around since the late 1800s. Natural selection, as proposed by Charles Darwin, has had a significant impact on evolutionary psychology. And while it used to be on the outskirts of psychology, evolutionary psychology is now becoming more mainstream. This demonstrates that, while certain ideas in social psychology appear to be timeless, others will gain and lose appeal. The 5 ideas I've outlined are only a small part of the field of social psychology. Other theories and concepts are social learning theory, cognitive biases, schemas, social comparison, and social exchange theory. There's something called the triangular theory of love, and don't forget about the bystander effect. So social psychology is concerned with more than only why humans make good judgments and follow the norms, because many of the ideas and experiments in this subject aim to address concerns regarding why humans do bad things. Many of social psychology's most famous or infamous experiments occurred in the years following World War II. How could people be capable of such atrocities? How can we avoid the attitudes and behaviors that gave rise to Nazism? So I'm going to go over some of these classic studies quickly. You may be familiar with these experiments and their impact on the world of psychology if you've seen some of my other videos. So first up is the Bobo Doll experiment, which is one of the most renowned experiments in psychology and contributed to the development of the social learning theory. Children were placed in a room with an adult, an inflatable Bobo doll, and other items for the Bobo Doll experiment. Some of these grown-ups were violent with this doll, while others ignored it or were gentle with it. Psychologists discovered that children who witnessed adults being hostile were more likely to be aggressive themselves. This demonstrated that youngsters can learn by modeling or observing the behaviors of others. The Stanford Prison experiment comes next. The Stanford Prison experiment is perhaps the most well-known. In fact, you can watch a film about it on Netflix. The experiment placed college-aged boys in a mock prison, with half of the group acting as guards and the other half acting as inmates. Guards and convicts rapidly assumed their respective positions, and both grew vicious. The project was actually called off after only 6 days. This experiment intended to demonstrate how rapidly labels and positions may affect a person, even in a simulated setting. The Milgram experiment is another well-known experiment. So why do we occasionally make dubious decisions? We're only doing what we're instructed because we're following orders. In the 1960s, Stanley Milgram conducted an experiment in which volunteers were trained to deliver electric shocks to participants who had no idea they were actors, at voltages of up to 450 volts. However, the researchers trained the individuals to administer the shocks. Surprisingly, several individuals actually provided the shocks, despite their discomfort. They still carried out orders. Milgram's experiment, like the Stanford Prison experiment, is remembered as a notable and potentially harmful experiment to the participants who administered the shocks. However, it does provide an explanation for why people commit crimes or make unethical actions. As I near the end of this video, you should be aware that this is only the top of the iceberg. There is much more to the scientific subject known as social psychology. After all, it's been debated since Aristotle's day. This field will continue to evolve, particularly as the globe confronts new issues and develops new technologies. Many social psychology studies, for example, focus on social media. However, social media was not even a concept 30 years ago. So take the time to master the fundamentals of social psychology and amass a library of information on how society affects individuals. You might discover something new about yourself, your culture, or how the people around you perceive the world. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this introduction video on social psychology, and I intend to produce a number of additional videos on specialized social psychology themes. As we conclude, I'd like to thank you for watching. I hope you found value in this video and learned something new, and I look forward to seeing you in our future videos. I would deeply value it if you could like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support will help us to create more valuable content. What are the key takeaways from this video that you can share in the comment section?